We shouldn't forget that this is not an opinion paper, or it's not an article in a newspaper. This is an official document.
So-called legal revision of the history by Tsulukiani Commission was not only for propaganda or was not only to putting the political party leaders in jail.
This is an unfortunate attempt to rewrite Georgia's modern history in favor of the Kremlin and fundamentally against Georgia's national interests.
Why would anybody do anything for the regime which is blaming its own homeland starting the war?
He is trying to eliminate the opposition, clean up the space, and then try to repopulate the opposition field as he sees fit.
They're willingly capitulating to Russia.
Hello and welcome to Talk Georgia. This is my English language podcast about Georgian and regional politics. Talk Georgia is brought to you by Droeba Media Group, which is a trusted source of high-quality news and analysis, and GISAG, a think tank providing comprehensive political analysis of Georgia and wider Black Sea region, also academic and practical training for postgraduate students and mid-career professionals. To deep dive into Georgian politics, today we are joined by Teona Akubardia, a politician, former member of parliament, where she was the deputy chair of Defense and Security Committee.
From the opposition.
Obviously from the opposition. She served as deputy secretary of Georgia's National Security Council. She is British educated and did her Defense and Security Studies at King's College London. Before that, she studied at Tbilisi State University, History of Diplomacy, if I'm not mistaken. She's also founding member of GISAG, as I am. So thank you, Teona, for your time, and welcome to the show. Please feel free to add anything to your bio before we get down to business.
Well, I don't think that there is need to add anything, but the thing is that we are all fighting for Georgia's European and Euro integration future and for territorial integrity and sovereignty, which is violated by Russia. So thanks for inviting on that very important topic today.
Yeah, you mentioned that Georgia's sovereignty and territorial integrity, and this is impossible basically to have it without defense and security, proper defense and security. And you are a person who's been working in that field already over a decade.
Yes.
And from that perspective, we're going to analyze Tsulukiani's Commission end product, which is a 470-page document, which from the first side, and a lot of people think that this is a kind of harmless document that simply talks about so-called crimes that were committed during Saakashvili's administration. But in fact, if you really deep dive into this document, you see a real serious dangers about Georgia's sovereignty and territorial integrity, because the talk is there about not just crimes, about stealing businesses or violating human rights or etc., etc. The talk is about the Georgian-Russian war and who started it, who initiated it, who provoked it. The talk is also about who committed war crimes, and we shouldn't forget that this is not an opinion paper, or it's not an article in a newspaper. This is an official document that some of the actions would be based later on that. So this commission was branded as a commission of treason or commission of betrayal of Georgia's national interests, and I think it is rightly so, because when I skimmed through this document, this is the prime example. How can you betray Georgia's national interests? So what is your assessment of the document first? Let's start from that. And then we will move further about Georgia's national and security interests.
Well, I must remind you the statement of President Ivanishvili in Giorgi just during the election campaign, parliamentary election campaign 11 months ago, where he officially accused Georgia starting the war, where he officially also apologized to occupants and it was just one side apology, and where he blamed the West in that conflict and not Russia, of course, who started this war and also continued with the occupation and creeping annexation. So this is a continuation of the Ivanishvili statement, where he also promised that there would be some Nuremberg process and everything would be revealed in that process, and the so-called Nuremberg process is Tsulukiani Commission. So why this document is a threat, and what are the narratives in that text? That's the main question, and I think we should divide it into two chapters. One is the past of Georgia since 2003, Rose Revolution, and also the war between Georgia and Russia, which does not have this kind of name in the document. It is totally different. So you would not understand with whom we had the war with the document, because the headline of this chapter, it is actions against territorial integrity and peace process. And it's not Russia in the headline, as the world is knowing this war. This is a Russia-Georgia war. And now when there is a full-scale aggression against Ukraine, nobody doubts who started the war. But let's talk about first about the content of the text, and then why this commission was organized, and what is the purpose of the so-called resolution of the illegitimate one-party parliament, and what are the dangers which it creates for Georgia's real sovereignty and territorial integrity. First of all, I will not talk about the crimes made by UNM through the text, but there is very interesting one issue which is related to the color revolutions, and which is similar to the Russian national security concept narrative, which I remember was very clear and very vivid, and it was the West accused by Russia organizing the color revolution, whether it was in Georgia, whether it was in Ukraine, and considered as a threat. So if you go through the text, it is a similar narrative coming from Russian national security concept, repeated by illegitimate one-party parliament, and thus increasing the attitudes and anti-West sentiments inside the country, and also approaching to the Kremlin version in order to secure their regime, but also distance themselves from the West. So that's very visible for me, how Kremlin language is used in terms of the color revolutions. But I would like to talk about the war and also the occupation.
Before moving to, I also had this feeling that it's not just, as you said, that the Kremlin propaganda that has been there all the way about the colored revolutions, whether it was in Georgia, Ukraine, Serbia, etc. But also, what with that passage, what the Tsulukiani Commission is trying to do, they are trying to undermine the legitimacy of the Saakashvili's administration, saying that that was a coup d'etat. And as a result of the coup d'etat, they came to power, saying by that they are not legitimate government. Yes. Exactly the same line as Russia pursued after they realized that Saakashvili was a different ruler compared to Shevardnadze. Sorry interrupting you.
Irakli Kobakhidze was the one who was saying it before the Treason Commission report was published, that there was the questions with regard of legitimacy of the Saakashvili government or parliament. And we know why they're also doing it, because Georgia won the case against Russia in Strasbourg court.
Absolutely.
Georgia won the case against Russia in Hague. While Russia was trying to accuse our militaries organizing the war crimes, and they lost it. And now, after the full-scale aggression against Ukraine, nobody even doubts who started the war. And I remember British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, he was the first after the full-scale war saying that this is a continuation of the war in Georgia in 2008. So when this is happening, I think distancing themselves from the West, repeating the Kremlin narrative, it is not just for propaganda and informational war. It has more deeper purposes and deeper ground. The reason why they are doing it, it is to please Kremlin, who is pushing Ivanishvili regime, its own ally, to establish 3 states in Georgia instead of one united, and to have Abkhazia, so-called South Ossetia, and Georgia as separate states, and having all of 3 instead of one under Russia's influences. So this is the most grave danger Ivanishvili is creating, and it is a gift for Kremlin or obligations for Kremlin while they are going against not only the constitutional priorities of Georgia, but the main interest, which is territorial integrity and sovereignty.
And you so rightly mentioned decisions of the international courts in Strasbourg, in The Hague, which very clearly says that Georgian side didn't commit any war crimes. But in this Tsulukiani document, what you still hear how Saakashvili's administration bombed so-called sleeping Twin Valley.
Yes.
And my question here is this, that if, okay, let's assume that Georgia did it, then obviously there would be a lot of hundreds, thousands of casualties on the other side, which there is not.
Well, I wouldn't agree to discuss this crazy propaganda in a way that it will reveal the history revision.
Yeah, I understand, but the point that I want to make here is that again, if this was true, then there would be a lot of civil casualties on the other side, but it's the other way around.
You cannot start the war on your territory. That's the first thing. And secondly, you cannot say that there was no Russia and it was just so-called South Ossetians. And
also
we had the conflict with them, and Russia then later came as a peacekeeper. Remember this Gori Sakrabulo chairman?
Yes.
And Gori was the city which was bombed by Russians during the war, and he was saying that the Russians were peacekeepers, our militaries were mercenaries, and that Russians helped.
Yeah, and the point that I was making
so
is that
narrative.
What Tsulukiani is trying to do, she is trying to revisit the decisions that were made in The Hague and in Strasbourg, and still claim that Georgia did some. Saakashvili did some war crimes.
Well, I don't think that they will be able to revise the decisions because this parliament has no legitimacy from the major Western countries, maybe Hungary or a bit Slovakia. But I say that I think that what they want to do is after they destroy the resistance in Georgia, or they will try to destroy the resistance because they cannot destroy the resistance so far, they will be willing to sign the so-called non-use of force agreement with occupied regions, Marian regime leaders, and by that start recognition of so-called independence of those 2 regions. Then I think that probably they will need the constitutional amendments, and they will need to have new parliamentary elections, but only after if they destroy political elite and also civil groups which continue the resistance. And somehow, in my opinion, it's not them willing to do that, but it's Kremlin. And when we see the international security context, whether it is the peace deal between Azerbaijan and Armenia and U.S. presence and the new peace project, or whether it is inability of Russia to reach its strategic goals against Ukraine, Russia is a winner in Georgia and only in Georgia. So my guess is that while there is this ambiguity about future, and while Russia has the worst situation in South Caucasus, they have the best situation in Georgia. So why not to have not only de facto winning but de jure, which means that they will have 1 year, maximum 1.5 years, until everything is over, in order to keep Georgia under its full control, also in legal understanding, and also to have the leverage over South Caucasus from Georgia, and also sell it for their domestic audience, that this is a success they made without any military forces.
While they are kind of struggling in Ukraine.
And Georgia is back willingly to Russia, despite the fact that Georgia was the most rebellious country in Soviet Union in the 90s. And we were fighting not only for our independence, but for our territorial integrity against Russia, not only in 2008, but also in the early 90s, when the conflict was started first, whether it was Tsulukiani region or Abkhazia.
Do you expect that Russians will be pushing for restoring diplomatic relations?
I do. So next step. So how I see the process. First is this so-called non-use of force, where there is no Russia, while we have the recognition from our Western partners that Russia is maintaining the effective control over the occupied territories, and it's only South Ossetia or Abkhazia, I mean, nobody will think about having the non-use of force agreement with Mingrelian region or Gurian region or Kakhetian. Obviously, when you sign this kind of treaty, which we were always opposing in Geneva talks, so of course it is the beginning of the recognition. But then when I'm talking about the diplomatic relations, if we don't start this so-called recognition process, then we cannot start restoration of the diplomatic relations, because the reason why we don't have the diplomatic relation, it was the recognition of the so-called independence of these two occupied regions. And until there is no any kind of positive steps towards this recognition process, I don't think that it's possible to restore the diplomatic relations. So there is a plan which Kremlin has, and there is already the attempts of to pressure Ivanishvili regime, which is very cooperative to Kremlin, for further steps. And this all depends on our resistance and on our resilience, because Russia will not be able to do it if we are continuing the resistance. So I think that's a 1 year or maybe 1.5 year plan, and everything depends on us, actually. But the legal, so-called legal revision of the history by Tsulukiani Commission was not only for propaganda, or was not only to putting the political party leaders in jail, but that was a real reason in order to follow the Kremlin demands. Because I do remember when the election was over, in 2 weeks there was Geneva talks, and Russia, for the very first time, made a statement that in Georgian constitution there was still NATO accession process written, and it was the very first time they referred to the constitution, and by that they expressed their anger against Ivanishvili, who was promising people of restoration of territorial integrity in order to change the constitution, and even by that time, Russia told Ivanishvili that there will be no one united Georgia, and it will be three states. So it's visible that they are not happy about having constitutional chapter 78 about Georgia's NATO and EU membership, and they want to get rid of that. But not only that, they want to form of whatever they already have in a way that will not create danger for further political changes in Georgia.
My next question is that you very interestingly outlined Bidzina's possible plan for the next 1.5 years that fully coincides with the Kremlin's plan. My question is that how will this possibly affect non-recognition policy of the occupied territories that so far has been a success, because only few minor countries basically recognize them as countries?
Well, you know that the non-recognition policy of Georgia was the most successful, despite the statement by ruling regime that they didn't understood what this term meant. And I remember it was Papuashvili, so-called Speaker of the Parliament, who undermined this policy in general. But well, I see the challenges also in that field, and the most visible challenge I could say was during the 70th years anniversary of the war in Georgia in UN. And it was the very first time that the United States didn't join the joint statement supporting Georgia's territorial integrity and sovereignty, not because that U.S. is not supporting this principle and Georgia anymore, but because
if anybody is supporting, that's the U.S.
Yes, of course, and they do have the law that stating that those states who recognize Georgia's so-called occupied territories sovereignty and independence will not get any cent from American budget. But the thing is that there is no any kind of communication between United States and Georgian regime. And this is a sign that GD was not working with the United States on that statement, and GD is not doing anything to call the partners to support the sovereignty and territorial integrity anymore. Because I remember last year, they never addressed our allies and partners supporting Georgia's territorial integrity and sovereignty in particular points. I was the MP who was sending with my all opposition members the letters to NATO and EU supporting Georgia's territorial integrity while in occupied between Russian naval fleet was to be organized. And I remember the NATO's official statement with regard of it. I remember when there was a between annexation process also we addressed, and the partner countries made the statements, but it was not GD who was doing it. I think that one thing is that GD is not willing to defend Georgia's territorial integrity, but another thing is that in this very complex international security situation in the world, Georgia will be less and less in the focus of our allies because of losing the importance as a country and losing the importance as an ally. Despite in very needed region, especially now. So when one thing is this support issue and support in non-recognition policy, another thing is that, well, you know, why would anybody do anything for the regime which is blaming its own homeland starting the war? This is also another problem. So who will be working on non-recognition policy? Well, that's the one problem, because there is no any kind of government who will support this policy anymore. And secondly, they're willingly capitulating to Russia. So this is a big problem. And I would like also to mention, according to report and during the process of discussion in this legitimate commission, I remember how Tsulukiani was attacking the heroes of this war. One thing is Rukhadze, who refused to step on Georgian flag, and he was tortured and killed. And he with her statement, she said that he was killed in vain. And another one was also another episode of this war was heroes of Shindisi, and this is also questioned. And the main blame on that concrete particular part of the war is on Georgians and militaries, not on Russia. So everything is done in order to stop the resistance and to just kill the resilience, whatever we are still having. Also to call for people somehow to obey and follow Kremlin. And with this informational warfare and psychological warfare as well, when we hear this war and peace issue, this is also the sign that we are going back to Russian influences willingly, and we are not resisting. So I think that this is a very well demonstrated process. So I would call it Russian hybrid warfare techniques. And this regime, it is just the fifth colonna of the Russian hybrid warfare technique. So it's all up to us and or up to our Western allies, how they will keep the policy which Georgia once used to have. But of course, without changing the situation, I don't think that anything good will happen.
Okay, I absolutely agree with you that this is an unfortunate attempt to rewrite Georgia's modern history in favor of the Kremlin and fundamentally against Georgia's national interests. But also, I think that we need. I think this document doesn't have only.
It has a domestic purpose as well.
It has a kind of domestic purpose.
Yes.
And this is what Georgian Dream's, let's say, pre-election pledge was all about.
To restrict the political parties through the Commission report.
To ban the UNM and also some of the other parties that, in their opinion, are connected or affiliated to the UNM. Well, they mean here also, like Gacharia's party, that you were part of some point.
Party list.
And not a member of party, but you were on the party list. And also Lelo, which has no connection with the UNM whatsoever. It has never had. But it's not only parties. If you really carefully read the document, at the end of the document, it says that, but also some of the NGOs.
Yeah, definitely.
And some of the individual leaders. And it's all not only again we'll talk about what this whole idea of the banning parties is all about, but the document doesn't really stop in 2012 when Saakashvili's administration was changed by the elections. But after that, the document states that the opposition parties, some of the NGOs, some of the individuals, they've been conspiring against Georgia's national interests, saying that, where they were sabotaging the visa-free travel.
Agents of the deep state and things like that.
And they were sabotaging the, what you call it, European Union candidate status. But in fact, in reality, what the real sabotage is that what we see now with the visa-free travel, because Georgia is losing visa-free travel.
And they're not fulfilling
because of Georgian Dream's policies and actions. But again, my question to you is that how you see what Ivanishvili is trying to do domestically and how he's going to use this document. My take on this is that he is trying to eliminate the opposition, clean up the space, and then try to repopulate the opposition field as he feels fit and as he sees fit. And only after that, we might get some, extraordinary elections. And the plan that you were saying that, just to change the constitution then...
To have the constitutional majority.
That might become possible.
Yeah. Well, Georgi, I think that Georgia is unique in terms of establishing the authoritarians in a year. It was not possible in Belarus. It was not possible in Russia. I'm not going for other countries, but that's the experiment which Ivanishvili and Kremlin together they are doing. So, in a year, they are kind of pretty successful, having the authoritarian rule, and it's already recognized by our allies, this status we are having. But now there is another season coming, which is with that report already opened. So one thing is that in a way, they might be willing to abolish the political parties, and it might be UNM and all the rest three, those parties who participate in the parliamentary election and won. And if you ask me, based on the text, it's not only UNM to be abolished by the Constitutional Court, but also Gahare for Georgia, because when Saakashvili was a man who waged the war against Ossetians, according to the text, and not against Russians. It is also former Prime Minister Gakharia who was willing to wage a war against Russia in terms of the episode of Chorchana, where the border police station was built to defend its own people, which was the obligation of the Prime Minister according to Constitution. But the thing is that what I'm afraid of, that they might just observe and see whether they will restrict all four or only two, and it's based on the scenarios. It's based on the scenarios, and we will see.
Opposition as he sees fit.
And that's the one thing. I don't think that anybody will read this commission report, to be honest, because it's such a low quality and such a propaganda. And
I also have to confess that I didn't read it. I skimmed through it and I read some of the parts
to
of
read
it.
Because it's a very low quality document, and despite Tsulukiani's saying that she will publish it as a book and universities will teach it, that schools they will teach it, of course it has no any kind of value in terms of the report. But the thing is that
Zaza is going to write a book based on that.
Oh, maybe. But the thing is that they're creating so-called legal basis for future. And when I'm saying that they're willing with this new season to destroy the resistance and resilience of civil activists, civil society organizations, and political parties, that's the plan. Through where they will try to use it in their own judiciary system, and it is visible that they're trying to do that. So, because Ivanishvili cannot have this so-called parliament up to 2028, and because he will have to have new elections, parliamentary elections, in order to change the constitution and get rid of the NATO and EU foreign policy priority, or maybe even go farther, whether it is so-called confederation model, which Russia tried in Georgia in 1996 and even later 1998, and also in Moldova. I don't know, but scenarios might be various, but definitely he will have to have new parliamentary elections on his term. That's what he thinks, and to have the constitutional majority in order to change the constitution. That should be his plan. And with that commission report, they have created so-called legal basis in order to address their own constitutional court to restrict whoever they want to. I would never understand if Gakharia party will not be abolished and only UNM will be abolished based on the reports. Because everybody is blamed in that report. Absolutely, and everybody, according to their propaganda, has to be restricted. That's how they explain it. But we see that they have the weaknesses. Weaknesses within, weaknesses on the international level, because nobody talks with them, nobody shakes their hands. It's only Hungarian leader, which was a very good friend of Mikhail Saakashvili, by the way, before he lost the elections in 2012 and left peacefully. So they have the weaknesses, and it's still the opportunity to save the situation for the country. But that's the plan of Ivanishvili. So whether it will be successful or not, it still depends on Georgian people and also our Western allies. Megubari Act has to be adopted in order to support Georgian democracy and Georgian people. British sanctions, I hope, will also come in a way which will be very painful for Ivanishvili and his inner circle, and somehow will address this anti-West propaganda, which is widely open with propagandist TV channels. So I'm expecting that everything is still in our hand.
Absolutely agree that yes, everything depends on us, and let's see who will prevail. I think that the Georgian people will prevail, and will go back on the track to NATO, to European Union, to a proper democratic state. Thank you, Teona, for being here, for your time. Thanks for watching us, to listening to us. Please subscribe to our new YouTube channel, and I'll see you next week.